mechanics of an hypothesis formulation and thesis drafting. In this one, just I want to highlight what is research, what is hypothesis, definitions, types, formulation, and testing. Synopsis, the difference between synopsis and thesis, its concept, meaning, writing process, chapters, then I will conclude today. We know that one, of course, Denise Pollitt, okay, one of the great nurse researchers, she defines research is always a systematic inquiry that uses disciplined methods to answer questions and solve problems. The ultimate goal of research is to develop, refine, and expand a body of knowledge. Department of Research and Development of Western Sydney University, they define research is defined as the creation of new knowledge. See the differences, okay? It has to give a new knowledge or something new to the use of existing knowledge in a new and creative way so as to generate new concepts, methodologies, and understandings. This could include synthesis and analysis of previous research to the extent that it leads to new and creative outcomes. Okay, this definitions, okay, these two definitions will guide us about what is research. So before going for an hypothesis, okay, we have to have the problem. What is this problem, research problem? Of course, we have seen that on how this Dr. Baral sir has highlighted, okay, research problem is a perceived gap between what is and what should be. Okay, this is the difference, okay, or what the gap is there, what is already existing and where you can go. So this diagram shows that where do we go from here, okay, from existing to where you can end it. Okay, so problem is like an identification of destination before undertaking your research journey. Think that one of the problem, okay, one of the student has done a PhD thesis, a study to the effectiveness of music therapy on levels of pain, anxiety, and physiological parameters among post-operative CABG patients in selected hospitals, Hyderabad, Telangana state. Okay, this is the problem. Okay, this is known as a problem statement. Here you can have an variables and also the setting on whom they are done and the population. From this one, can form a hypothesis. Okay, we can have the concept of an hypothesis. What is this hypothesis? Sir already has highlighted. It is, of course, it is a guess. Okay, it is your own guess or a prediction that gives directional to the researcher to answer the research question. What we have seen now. It is, of course, a formal statement always written in a tentative or an expected prediction or explanation of the relationship between two or more variables in a specified population. Usually we will be having an independent and dependent variable. What is the relationship between these two will be written in a formal way is known as an hypothesis. So before writing, what all the things must be there to define it or to write it. Okay, you have to have a clarity. Always think that on the when you will frame a problem statement, okay, you have to know that what is the dependent variable and independent variable. Having clarity that how you can frame it, the hypothesis. Okay, how clearly, be simple in the words. Okay, on the basis of a research problem and objectives. What are the objectives you are having? Describes, explains, or predicts the expected results or an outcome of the research. When you will see that on hypothesis, it has to give that on what is the outcome of my research. Okay, it has to give an intuitive experience to give that what will be my outcome. Helpful to know the research design. There are so many types of research designs are there, which signifies hypothesis that on what will be my research design, whether it is a descriptive, analytical, correlative, or epidemiological. Okay, which one it is an what type of research design it has to indicate. Directs the research study process. Identifies the population of the research study that is to be investigated or examined. Very, very important. Okay, when you will see the hypothesis, okay, you will come to know that on how much we are covering it. What is the population? India also it facilitates data collection, analysis, and data interpretation. Okay, how we can go through it, whether it is in quantitative or qualitative analysis. These are the some of the specificities of an hypothesis. Here, just I want to highlight different types of an hypothesis. Very selectively, I have taken simple, complex, empirical, null, alternate, logical, and statistical. Simple hypothesis, it is the relationship between independent variable and dependent variable or in its effects. Like that, for example, very simply, you can make that one smoking leads to cancer. Okay, this is the simple, because we know that one smoking causes an cancer, but what type of an cancer it will not signify. So the higher ratio of an unemployment leads to crimes. This is the simple hypothesis. Here it don't have any direction, or if one increases or an other decreases. So it will not give any direction or anything. Just we are simply we are defining it. Next one is the complex hypothesis. It reflects a relationship among more than two variables having an for example, higher the illiteracy in a community, higher will be poverty and crime. Here you can see that illiteracy is the independent variable and dependent variables are two, poverty and crime. So both are having a relationship with the illiteracy. So it is complex. So when you go for an analysis, you have to have different types of an analytical test, like an ANOVA, multiple ANOVA, okay, ANCOVA you have to go. Next, smoking, air pollution and drugs leads to cancer, tension, chest infections, etc. Here also, if you see that on only one independent variable, smoking, is having effects on pollution, okay, drugs, okay, these are the different ones. We is having cancer, tension and chest. So many variables are there. So it is having a complex. So the outcome will be also in a varied one. Empirical hypothesis, use of working hypothesis that can be tested using observation and experiment. Coming to a null hypothesis, also called as a statistical hypothesis, sir has already highlighted. It is a specific statement about a population parameter made up of for the argument. Okay, you will argue it whether it is you can accept it or reject it. It is always about a population parameter, not about a sample statistic. Always keep it in mind that when you will frame it, you will frame as on a population basis, not as a sample. No significant difference between specified populations or any observed difference being due to sampling or experimental error we feel or we think. Here, variables are assumed to be innocent of any relationship until they can be shown guilty through appropriate statistical measures. So we will test it. When you will test it, then only we will accept or we will reject it. It is a formal statement of assumption of innocence. It's usually always denoted by H0. Means, for example, there will be no significant difference between the pre-test and post-test knowledge score of nursing students. Means here we will say that one innocent, means we will not feel that one there is no difference. Always it starts with there will be no significant difference and H0. Then we will test it. Next, alternative to a null hypothesis. Okay, it is a statement of what we believe is true if our sample data causes us to reject the null hypothesis. Always when you reject it, it is called as an alternative. Okay, it is a negation of a null hypothesis. Can be maybe H alpha, okay, mu equals to or more or lesser. Next, logical hypothesis. It is a proposed explanation using limited evidence. We will be having in logic, we feel or we assume. Creatures found at the bottom of the ocean use anaerobic respiration rather than aerobic respiration. It is our own logic. Okay, through our logic, we frame the hypothesis. Statistical hypothesis, a statement about the nature of the population. It can be verified statistically. The statement should be logical or illogical, but if statistic verifies, it will be statistical hypothesis. How we can form it? Okay, what are the criteria of an hypothesis formulation? Always it must be empirically testable, whether it is right or wrong. Always you have to think that one whenever you will frame an hypothesis is testable one. It should be specific and precise. I told you that on how we have to write. The statements in the hypothesis should not be contradictory, okay, because it gives a very complex phenomenon. It should specify variables between which the relationship is to be established. I told you, especially the independent variable and dependent variable. If it is in two, it is very well and good. If more are there, but it has to be very specifically noted. It should describe one issue only. If one issue is there, it is very easy to go for further things. So this is the scheme of an hypothesis testing. First state H0 or an as well as an HA, null hypothesis as well as an alternate hypothesis. Specify the level of significance. Very important. Where you are on which ground you are testing it. whether it is an 0.05 level of significance or 0.01 level of significance. Always keep it in mind. Means it how we have to frame it, or how we will come to know that when it is a level of significance, because how much you are controlling, okay, what type of an experiment research design is there, okay, what type of an population is there, then how you are collecting it. These are all the things, and what type of statistic you are using it. All these things will comes to an consideration. Then you have to test the level of significance or come to level of significance. Especially what happens, okay, those who are doing in chemistry, physical sciences, and okay, they will go for a 0.01 level of significance. Means we are controlling 99% of the things, but it's not possible in nursing and medical sciences. So we will usually go for a 0.05 level of significance. Means 5% is not under our control, 95% we can control it. Okay, this is also one type of an assumption by having an evidence from an other sources also. So next is the decide the correct sampling distribution, how it is, whether it is an normally distribution or equally or a non-equally. Sample a random sample and work out an appropriate value. Okay, very good. Next, calculate the probability that sample result would diverge as widely as an expectations if H0 were true. In this probability equal or smaller than or value in case of a one-tail test or a two-tails alpha, okay, you have to consider it, whether you have to reject it, whether you have to accept it, then on the basis of an statistical things. So first one is the null hypothesis, formula alternative hypothesis. Then we will get this one, whether it is an mu larger or smaller, then whether we have to accept it or reject it. So how the rejections will be there, okay, in a bell-shaped curve, you will come to know that one rejections of an alpha and also left side and right side, okay, how it is mediated from the mean. Select the suitable test of significance or in a test, whether the test involves one sample or two samples or more samples, whether two or more samples used are an independent or an how it is related. Is the measurement scale is an very important, okay, what type of a tool you are having it, okay, whether it is a nominal, ordinal, interval or ratio. Depending upon this one, we have to have a different tests. So the choice of a probability distribution of a sample statistic is guided, but the sample size n and the value of population of standard deviation, okay, is very important. When it is both are known, okay, population and SD, okay, when it is known, you can if it is in more than 30, you can go for a normal distribution, okay. Then if it is in lesser, okay, you can go for a T test or a T distribution. If the population is normal, okay, you have to find out that whether the population is normal or not, okay, whether it falls in the bell-shaped curve or not, okay, from the medium mean of a two standard deviation. If it's no, then is the sample is more than 30 or not. If it's no, go for a non-parametric test. If it is yes, Z test. Then if the population standard deviation is known, okay, if it is not known, okay, you can go for a T test. Then if you know the standard deviation of the population, then you can go for Z test. Some few days back, Dr. Kulkarni sir has taken how we can do this tests, okay. Then how to formulate a decision rule to accept the null hypothesis. Accept H0 if the test statistic value falls within the area of an acceptance, otherwise reject otherwise. So when you go for it, okay, we'll get in errors, okay, these are cannot be ruled out, but it will be there. So how we can see that what type of an error type of this H0, whether it is true or false. When you will reject it, when H0 isn't true, you will get an alpha 1 error, okay, false correction formula, you can use it. Accept H0, okay, when H0 is true, then you will get it. Then when it is false, you will get a type 2 error. So Z test, okay, you can find out by level of significance and also alpha percentage 0.01, 0.05, 0.01 and 0.05, one tail test and two tail region, okay, how much it is deviated. This is about hypothesis, types of hypothesis and hypothesis formation and testing. Now we will see about an synopsis or an thesis drafting. Okay, what is this synopsis? This is the first step that when you will say that I have to go for a research. Okay, the university will say that when you send the synopsis. So synopsis also known as a research proposal. It communicates a research problem, process, and proposed methods of solving it. How you go for it. Writing mechanics are the conventions governing the technical aspects of writing, including spelling, punctuation, capitalization, and abbreviations. How you do it. These are all the things is known as an mechanics. Synopsis, of course, it is a proposal for starting research. Okay, how you go through it, how you do it. Okay, because it is a process. When process is there, input is there, throughput is there, output is there, and feedback is there. Okay, it is a consecutive sequence of the steps. First, look towards worthiness of research and potentials of the researcher. Okay, of course, you have to know that on what type of research you are doing, how much is in significance to your domain of the knowledge, and also potentials of the researcher, how much you are in expertise, whether you are doing for an undergraduate level, postgraduate level, or at an PhD level, or an independent study. Deciding a path of an investigation, looking towards required resources. Okay, of course we need so many resources. Okay, money, materials, then time. Okay, all the things we have to keep it in mind before selection of the problem or going through the research process. Seeking back in literature and synthesizing those with present status for future. Always, whenever you are doing any research, we need a review of literature. Before selecting the problem, go for an in-depth review which you want to carry on the research. So thesis and synopsis. Okay, thesis is a very extensive. Synopsis is the representation, or it is an above view of the thesis. So it has to have introduction, literature review, design and methodology, implications, discussions, and conclusion. Okay, here you can find out the research gap and you can propose it. Coming to thesis and dissertations. Scientific research is systematic, controlled, empirical, and critical investigation of hypothetical propositions about the presumed relation among natural phenomena. This dictionary defines, okay, thesis is a proposition that is maintained by argument. It's an argument, okay, whether you agree or not, or but you are telling in a disciplined and also in researchable way. A dissertation, a dissertation to be a lengthy, formal treatise, especially one written by a candidate for the doctoral degree at a university. It is known as a dissertation. Thesis, usually at an undergraduate level or postgraduate level or an honors level, what you do, and having a minor thesis and master's thesis, depending upon the words. Okay, if it is in 10,000 words, usually minor. If it is in more than 10 to 25,000, it scores in master's level. Okay, that also for an MPhil 30 to 40,000. Okay, PhD is usually will be having an more than 80 to 1 lakh words, or it is examined by 3 to 7. It carries on 3 to 5 years and examined by different people. Okay, from one thesis goes to an out of country, then they will evaluate it. Okay, this is the conceptual differences between thesis and dissertation. So thesis is an extended argument. It must demonstrate logical, structured, and defensible reasoning based on credible and verifiable evidence presented in such a way that it makes an original contribution to knowledge as judged by experts in the field. Always you have to keep in mind that whatever you are doing, it must add a knowledge. Okay, you have seen the definition, and it is your bona fide work. So it must give an original contribution to the knowledge. Before writing, just organize the references, okay, which are all the things, okay, where you are taken. You can use the softwares like an EndNote, okay, Mendeley, Jotero. Then writing skills you have to have. So before writing, okay, you have to read a lot, okay, read everything. Think that when you are selecting a problem on that related one, okay, very in-depth you have to read. Then only you can write it. Consider time management and scientific writing. Next, visualize the thesis in a very, very broad way. Okay, out of the box, you have to think and you have to visualize that on how you can carry on from first page to last page. Revise the gaps, very, very important, from starting to an end, how you are selecting. Okay, for that one, you have to do very in-depth review of literature. So the process, thesis writing defined strictly follow a schedule with dates for writing every chapter of the thesis. Always have a time schedule. Okay, when you say that on I have started to do in research from that day till your submission, okay, have a tentative time schedule and stick on to it. Helps to know the drawbacks. Create you can have an empty pages, then you can add it because it goes on changing. Every time that you get a good idea for a section of the thesis, you can add it. Okay, you can rewrite it. Then of course you have to always keep it in mind that on writing thesis is a very tedious work. So this is the structure, overall structure of a thesis. First, introduction, problem statement, aim and scope, thesis and overview. Next, having a synthesis, analysis, okay, background, geography, fair reading, current theory, okay, practice, then synthesis, analysis, discussion, conclusions, okay. Then you can core with your work proposals and results. So if you see that one, mainly it contains introduction, background, the core, and a synthesis. Parts of a thesis, okay, what all things it has to contain: title page, approval sheet, abstract, acknowledgement, dedication, table of contents, tables, then figures, list. Title page, first page, okay, the title page usually of your thesis, first name, your surname, okay, whether you are doing for a master's, PhD, or under whom, okay, place and date of completion. This is the sample. You can see that on the logo. Then university to whom you are submitting, by whom. Next, it is having in measurements, title of thesis, okay, how many inch you have to leave, author's name. Then it also depends upon an university format. So be thorough with the university format of an writing a thesis. Title, measurement, okay, name of the university, college, okay, usually 1 inch, okay, left and right. Then upper page, half of the page, you have to write the statement. Then the title and number of the course, okay, date, student, time. Approval sheet by dean or an guide. This is an approval sheet, okay. It contains your problem statement, by whom, okay, then who is an advisor, by department. This is the approval sheet. Coming to an abstract, this is the main thing, okay. It presents a brief summary of your thesis, okay, whole what you have done it, okay. The aim of the abstract is to briefly provide the reader, when the reader reads, okay, it has to give an whole view of your thesis. It must be 350 to 400 words, okay, and 150 for master's degree. It must contain the whole thesis, okay, in a very, very systematic way. You can see that on how they have written abstract. It must have an 350 to 400 words. It's having measurements also. 1 inch, okay, how we were to write. Okay, if you view this one, you will comes to know that on how much margin, okay, what is the font size, and all the things you can keep it in mind. Acknowledgement page, focus on expressing gratitude to who has helped you. This is also one way of writing, okay. 2 inch centimeters you can leave. Acknowledgements to whom we can add them. Dedication, dedicating thesis to certain people or groups who have inspired the researchers while doing the thesis, okay. You can see that on to whom which you want to dedicate, you can dedicate and you can write it. Table of contents, this is the overall, okay, outline of the thesis, compiled by listing headings in the thesis down by whichever level you choose, okay. You can see the things, samples, table of contents having the tables, okay, figures, abbreviations, okay, all the things with the index numbers. List of tables include a list of figures, okay, then illustrations. You can use a separate page, okay, have a caption, page number, all the things. Title of chapters, okay, yeah, depends upon different universities also. First one is the problem and background, review of literature, methodology, presentation, analysis and interpretation of data, summary, conclusions and recommendations. You can have the title of the chapters of measurement, okay. Usually it depends upon the university format, but this is the ideal one which usually the all will follow. Coming to first chapter, introduction and the background of the study. Here what you have to do, it is the first chapter of your thesis. Here you have to provide an introduction just to give an idea, the concept about what you are doing it. you have to give the context in terms of the content of the research project. So it has to have an overview of your background, okay, what is there, okay, your problem, what is your results, it may be overview of the problem, importance, methods, okay. Then it must be very short, and don't go for more than 10 pages. And you have to write that introduction from general to very, very specific, because you are covering from an overall to very specific. You can see here how they have written introduction, the topic and its significance, background, and also they highlighted the gap. So always whenever you think that, you have to think in a very comprehensive way of writing the thesis. Significance of the study, very, very important. The significance of the study will mainly focus on the question, who will benefit from the study. This section will state the contribution of your study and the usefulness of your study in the society. How much my study will be helpful to the society and the domain of knowledge. Coming to a thesis statement, when you frame the sentence, it must reflect the scope, okay. It must be too broad, okay. It has to defend. Then make sure reader is easily identify your thesis and sentence, okay. Don't jeopardize, okay. You can have the in a precise way. For example, okay, convince your reader whether school uniforms should be mandatory in public schools, okay. You can see that one, this is the examples. So the problem statement reflected to your title. Readers must know your problem by just simply reading your topic, okay. Don't have an yes or no, it must be in a declarative way. Just now we have seen, coming to an hypothesis, it is the relationship between variables. We have to define it. We have to have a thesis hypothesis, and thesis statement is different, okay. Hypothesis is testable, but thesis statement is what is your problem statement. Next is the conceptual framework. We have to have, okay, so many universities, they will add a conceptual framework. Especially in nursing, we will add a conceptual framework. It elaborates the research problem in relation to relevant literature, how we have gathered it, okay, how you frame it from the starting to an end in the form of an figures, okay, in the form of an diagrams. When you show it, then it is called as a conceptual framework. It gives them the research gap also, key ideas and constructs and variables of the problem. It will be conceptualized relationship between the variables of an independent variable and dependent variable. So you can have an presumed effect also. You can frame it. You can use your own. Otherwise, also you can have an theory and you can apply it, and you can frame your own conceptual framework. It depends upon purely on the researcher or an investigator. So if you see this one, okay, conceptual framework, okay, roughly instructional materials and equipment commonly used in teaching science, okay. When you are using an pedagogy of an education, traditional methods are the technological and equipments, okay, which are all the variables like an age, gender, civil status, educational attainment, okay, and service, all will affect the materials. Next, when you have to define it, scope and delimitations. Scope is mainly the coverage of your study, and the delimitation is the limitation of your study or an topic. When you are explaining the scope, you have to explain in varied angles, okay, in different knowledge domains. Then delimitations. Then operational definitions. Whenever you will select the key terms, will be what it means in your study. It is known as an operational definitions. Think that when somebody is doing an stress and coping among students, okay, stress and coping is a very vague terminology. What it means, how you define it in your thesis, is known as an operational definition. So next is the review of literature, usually second chapter. This part will give data about how you go for it, okay, how you done it, is an evidence that why you selected this one, okay, what is the gap. You have to organize this review of literature, okay, depending upon the exact thing, then related materials, okay. So you can have an exactly, there's no fast and rules that one you have to have these many studies, but you have to have, it has to give the evidence that it has to support your problem statement and all the things, okay. You have to keep it in mind that we have to have an more studies, it has to be noted. Next one is the methodology. Very, very important. Methodology chapter is to give an experienced investigator enough information to replicate the study. Actually, you have to have from how starting to in the end how you are doing it. Okay, it must explain the research design, okay, contrasting, comparing, then why you are doing it. Okay, all the things you have to have, whether it is a descriptive or quantitative or qualitative. Population and samples. Okay, describe the population of an interest and the sampling subjects used in the study. Okay, how you selected population, why you selected. Okay, then what type of sampling you have taken, how you sampled out. Okay, then what type of sampling wasn't suitable, you have to give as an rational, you have to describe it in the methodology. Research instruments, tools. Okay, how you selected. Okay, how you prepared it, whether it is a generalized tool or it is a self-structured, how you have done it. What is the, you have to give a blueprint here also, that the instrument or a tools have prepared it is a very, very specific to my study. Next, validation procedure, very important. When you prepare it, okay, the tool, you have to go for a validation. How you have done in validation, to whom you have sent it. Okay, think that when you are doing in stress on a student, so it must give that one odd members. Okay, 5 to 7 people, related the people you have to send for a validation, to whom you have sent it. Okay, what is their qualifications, what is their experience. Okay, what all things they have validated. Then how you have done in tool analysis, this you have to write here. So it must depends upon the qualitative and quantitative. Next, data gathering procedure and statistical treatment of data. Describe how instrument will be administered, how we have done it. Okay, administration of the tool, then of the processing of the treatment of the data. Always highlight the ethical consideration, very, very important. Okay, if it is an qualitative or quantitative, how you highlighted the participants and ethical things, then are you taken the permission from the ethical board or review board or not. Okay, next, data processing and analysis, whether it is in quantitative or in qualitative, how you are going for an analysis. Okay, whether it is a survey or a questionnaire or an interview method, then what type of test you are assessing it. Next is the chapter 4th is the presentation, analysis and interpretation of data, how you are framing the data. Okay, how you are going for the analysis. Okay, tabulation, tabular form, textual or graphical form. Analysis of data, whether what type of an you are using in software, whether it is in quantitative or in qualitative, what type of measurement. Okay, then you have to have an in the declarative statement. Interpretation of data, establish interconnection between and among the data. Okay, depending upon the objectives and hypothesis. Check for indicators whether hypotheses are supported or not. Link the present findings with the previous literature. Okay, here you have to very just highlight that one. Yes, whether some of the findings are related to other findings of those who are done. Use parallel observations of contemporary events. Next is the summary of findings, conclusions and recommendations. This is the chapter 5th. Here we have to summarize the findings depending upon the objectives, and also if you find out any other than, also you can add here. Okay, it depends upon the university, the usually what they follow it, the silent findings and the results of the hypothesis. Next, conclusions. Okay, these are brief generalized statements to answer to the research question. Okay, general and each of the specific subpopulations, you have to conclude it. Okay, conclude it on the basis of your objectives. These contain generalized in relation to the population and also very, very specific to the your wider population and similar population. Very important. Flexibility is considered in making of conclusions. It's not a must to state conclusions as an one-to-one correspondence, but it is an overall what you concluded. Okay, having zoom lens approach, it is called as a zoom lens approach. It may be used as a generalization from micro to a micro level, from smaller to very wider angle you have to use. Next is the recommendations. They should be based on the findings and conclusions of the study. What all things you have to recommend it. Okay, how you recommend it. You have to use here in recommendations also in different fields and different wider angles. You have to recommend the things for the researcher, the next researcher, the future researcher, they can use your findings, then they can go for very in-depth study. Recommendations may be specific or general or both. Okay, they must include suggestions for further studies, maybe depending upon the setting. Okay, then sample size, then using in different types of tools. Also, you can recommend that one. They can go for varied use of and testing the same concept in a different ways. They should be in non-technical language. They should be feasible, workable, flexible, doable, and adaptable. Very important. Okay, because you have to see that when you recommend to others, this study has to be done and it must be useful to others and above all to the society, to the globe. Next, references. When you are writing in references, okay, there are so many formats are there. Okay, and you can use it in Mendeley, Jotero, or an EndNote. Maybe whichever the university format is there. Okay, maybe an APA, Vancouver, Harvard style. Okay, you can follow it. Then you can adhere to that one. Then you have to write. Then sometimes some of the universities, okay, thesis having in footnotes. Okay, these are notes placed at the bottom of a page. Okay, usually they will cite references or comment on a designated part of the text. Okay, so you have to know that on what is footnote and endnote. Endnote will be has written at the end of the chapter, and footnote is there at the each page can write it. So thesis writing is a tedious activity. Okay, if you see, okay, if you ask me, most universities use IMRAD format. Mainly any thesis you say, it takes front matter, main body, and supplementary pages. Of course, as a strict discipline, time management, passion is needed. Overall, if you see and how you can go for an thesis writing, okay, of course, it is a challenging task. Follow definite rules, okay, because every university is having their own way of in preparation of the thesis or an dissertation, from starting from first page, okay, cover page, whether it is in color also, black, green, red, okay, what is the font size, what type of an color of an this problem statement or how to write. Okay, from first page to be thorough with that the rules and regulations, otherwise it will be very difficult. Language, you write very simple and also jargon free. Okay, don't use very complicated things, complicated very high-fi language. Okay, it must be readable, it must be professional, and it must be in a researchable way. Size and physical design, always you have to think that on what type of size, okay, how many pages, logically you have to frame it, and then physical design, how you wanted that one. Next, procedure, having chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, you have to know that on where you have to put. Okay, some of the universities, they will put in some extra also. Okay, you have to keep it in mind. You have to just to go through it, do the review of different this is, then you will come to know. Layout, decide depending upon statement of problem and objectives. Okay, how my thesis must be there. Yeah, also whether it is an quantitative or an qualitative statement. Okay, then what are the objectives are there, how many objectives I put, then how much it takes the pages and all the things. Overall, you have to keep it in mind that on how my thesis has to come out. It's a book, so we have to know that on the principles of an book writing. Okay, how we can publish it, or how the reader has to be enjoy my book. Treatment of quotations, whenever you're using in quotations, you have to be very careful, otherwise if you don't quote it, it will be under plagiarism. Okay, so whether single quotation, double quotations, you have to keep it in mind. Go for an just to see for the footnotes, documentation. Okay, reference style, what type of reference styles the university follows. Then authorship, whether it is in single study or in many people are there, if are there, who is the first author, second author. Okay, keep it in mind. Use of statistics, charts, and graphs, because you have to follow the principles of all this one, how you to frame a chart. Okay, where you put tables. Okay, table number, then key aspects. Okay, you have to mention it. Next, take and print out. Okay, do and read it, give for proofreading, then you take the final draft, then see for bibliography, then afterwards you can prepare the index. So these are the things must be kept in mind before taking the final thing. So just to remember, it must be KISS, means keep it simple and stupid thing. Okay, With this one, I end today's session. Thank you one and all. Thank you.